All right, we're recording. I do believe this is episode 25 of Just This by Richard Rohr. And can you believe this? I think we started this last November is when we started, something like that. So yeah, we're doing our usual do on the book, right? It's going to be a year-long journey. So at any rate, before we dive into the text, we were talking about no problem to solve last week, which I really liked. I really liked I liked the little subhead, and I liked the section, because so often don't we live life as if it's a problem to solve? Gosh, just we got to fix this, we got to fix that, we got to do this, it's just a problem to solve rather than just moments to enjoy. So that's basically the tack he was taking, you know. There is no problem to solve, just an immediate intimacy to enjoy. So it was any thing that you've been hanging on for the last week that you want to bring up before we dive into new material tonight? Well, then I guess we tied it off last week. All is well. Okay, then we're going to dive in on page 41. The ordinary paths of love and suffering. And this one and the next one are, I thought, particularly well written, just kind of almost poetic. And I don't know that we need to spend a whole lot of time. We actually might get two done tonight. Can you imagine what life would be like if we did two tonight? That all depends on you, how deeply you want to dive in, how many rabbit trails we get into, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, there's Sarah. All right, we got Sarah with us. And Lori. All right, very cool. All right, page 41. The ordinary paths of love and suffering. For the most part, we learn both awe and surrender by letting life come to us on its own terms, by not resisting the wonderful underlying mystery that is everywhere and all the time, as we take our place in the endless parade of all creation. We often have to be shocked into waking up to consciousness. Great love does it, as does great suffering. When we are deeply in love with something, with anything, we tend to be fully present for that unique honeymoon period. Someone has said, to be a saint is to have loved many things. Many things. The tree, the dog, the sky, the flower, even the color of someone's clothing. When we truly love, we simply love, regardless of the worthiness or value of the object. No wonder that we speak of being in love, because it is a state of being more than an occasional deliberate action. It will often feel like wonder, and our eyes will be temporarily wide open and receptive. A similar thing happens in the present of great suffering and grief. The many forms of dying also pull us into the now, even though I hate to admit it. I know none of us like it, but simple suffering, not getting our way, is often the quickest and longest lasting form of transformation into love. Okay. Any first reactions or general comments before we put it on the autopsy table? Anything that stood out?
That last sentence about not getting our way, but I'll wait to circle back to that one.
That struck you though, William, huh? I like that one too.
Me too.
Simple suffering, not getting our way. Sometimes it's not so simple though, is it?
No.
Sometimes the suffering is very present, very real, and very overwhelming. Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, well, let's get back to the top then. For the most part, he says, we learn both awe and surrender by letting life come at us on its own terms, by not resisting the wonderful underlying mystery that is everywhere and all the time, as we take our place in the endless parade of all creation. You know, we keep coming back to this theme of his that we need to be ambushed, right? That it's only in our unguarded moments that the awe can actually come in, that we see these moments for what they really are, you know, as sacred ground. Because most of the time, our egoic mind is working overtime. That was a theme from last night, right? Brady was talking about this. You know, the egoic mind is just running the show. It is just sucking all the oxygen out of the room. It never lets us rest. It never lets us see anything but basically the inside of our eyelids. I mean, it's just right here. It's just, you know, that little globe around our head like a space helmet. I mean, that's all, that's our whole universe. That's our whole reality. And so it's only in those unguarded moments. And that's why great love and great suffering are so valuable and so necessary, because they break through that egoic shell for just a moment sometimes, but they can do it. They're strong enough, they're intense enough, and they can do it. And then we can have a chance to see something different, something that we don't think we already know. So by letting life come to us on its own terms, by not resisting the wonderful underlying mystery. The egoic mind really doesn't like mystery very well, doesn't like uncertainty, wants to have it all figured out, wants to have it all under control. But if we can let that be, if we can just let mystery be and realize it's everywhere and all the time, then we can join what Thomas Merton called the general dance. I always love that phrase, to join the general dance, that all of creation is dancing to music that we're only going to hear in our unguarded moments. But when we do, then we can join in, join the dance, join the endless parade. I mean, choose your metaphor, but it's like that. And then if you think about what Jesus is telling us that we've been talking about in the last few Sundays, because we've been in the Sermon on the Mount, beginning of chapter 7 of Matthew, he's talking about you don't judge. And this whole idea of judging is that egoic mind in its emphatic mode. But if we could stop that, you know, stop trying to objectify and put definitions and handles on everything and compare and contrast and do all the things that we do, then finally the moment can be enough for us. And it just is what it is. And that's a moment of perfect contentment. That's Paul saying, I've learned to be content in all my circumstances, because he's letting the moment be enough. He's not changing the moment to suit his preferences or his aversions, right? It's just the moment is what it is, and that's enough. We can all do that at any time we want, if we can just let the moment be. He continues, we often have to be shocked into waking up to consciousness. There we go. Same idea, right? Great love does it, as does great suffering. When we are deeply in love with something, with anything, we tend to be fully present for that unique honeymoon period. All right? Someone has said to be a saint is to have loved many things: the tree, the dog, the sky, the flower, even the color of someone's clothing. So this there is really, if you think about it, no greater shock than love and suffering. Think about some time that you have been in love, just like Bill and Gail are right now. See them in that picture, how beautiful that is. And Beth and Brady, you know, shoulder to shoulder there in their marital bliss. Think about it, sometime that you were in love. Try to remember that feeling if it's not here with you right now. You know, there is that I mean, falling in love is a perfect metaphor, because you feel like you're falling, you know, that literal head over heels, just free falling. And colors seem to be brighter, and food tastes better, and just everything about life changes. It's like, you know, you took dirty glasses off, and all of a sudden everything is just right there. That's that feeling. It's falling in love is falling into vulnerability. Falling in love is falling completely open Your heart is on your sleeve. There is nothing between you and the beloved. That's what feels so good. You know, it's amazing that it's so simple, and yet that's the part of us that the ego is always guarding. It's always keeping the defenses up. It's always trying to allow us to survive. And it's that very action that is the opposite of falling in love. Because in falling in love, all defenses are down, shields are down. We're just wide open. We are absolutely vulnerable. We're absolutely hurtable. And every time you fall in love, you're going to get hurt. I mean, that's just part of it. You know that, right? But it feels so good to be in that state. That's the state of connection. And it really opens up everything at the same time. I think that's what he's talking about. To be a saint is to have loved many things, basically everything. You know, for me, Francis of Assisi is the perfect example of just loving everything. Brother, sun, sister, moon, right? Sister, death. I mean, everything to him was that close, that intimate, that connected. You know, he literally talked to the animals. Legend has it he would stand on his head so that he could see the world from the right perspective. He called himself Jongleur des Dieux. See how good my French is? Means God's clown, basically. That's the way he saw himself, and that's what he called himself. You know, that kind of approach to life is an in-love approach. There is, you know, there is no artifice, there is no barrier. And I think that's what this experience of falling in love is showing us. Now, it can't last. You know, the ecstatic moment can't last. The honeymoon can't last. And then love matures and changes and moves into something else if it continues. But it doesn't mean that we can't learn to be more and more unguarded, to be able to move away from the egoic defense system and just move into moments like this. And that's what, of course, contemplative practice is all about, to let the moment still awe us, stun us, and that we surrender to it. So he's just giving us more wordplay. But what love does sort of without permission, I mean, do you really decide you're going to fall in love with someone or fall in love with anything? It just sort of happens to you. You know, it sneaks up on you, it ambushes you. And then all of a sudden you realize you crossed the Rubicon, you crossed the threshold, there's no going back, you're cooked, you know, but that's the way it is. But what we're trying to do in contemplation, of course, is to do it voluntarily with intention and volition, and to be able to do it repeatedly, to be able to move into that space when we want to, and then to move back out when we need to, but to have that balance. Any thoughts about all that stuff?
Yeah, it sounds really good. Yesterday I'd give myself an F grade because in the morning I felt love. I felt really good. I felt connected. And then when I checked my checking account, my internet provider charged me $300 more for no apparent reason. And my call to try to resolve that lasted literally 3 hours. And I started out really good, really well. I was patient. I listened. I made my points. But as time moved on and I was looking at the clock, at about the hour and a half point, I lost it. And I felt like I had to be really forceful to get the situation rectified. And I didn't like it, but maybe I couldn't stay in a more present state. My frustration and anger became the present state. And so, I didn't like the fact that I felt like I had to get forceful to get the result and the outcome, and so, like you said, I give myself a grade of F yesterday, but but I don't know if I felt like I was suffering. I really did. It was like I'm lost in this maze of getting transferred and people not really knowing what they were supposed to do. And it was painful.
That's where you say F but improving, Tony.
What?
That's when you say you got an F but improving.
Well, like it took a while to calm down, and to get back to a
Oh.
space where I did feel, like I was present and could go
Mhm.
on about life and do all the things that we do every day. But
Well, Tony, you might have got an F yesterday, but you walked the creek with your dogs today, so that's an A. You bounced right back.
well, I walked the creek first, and then I got into this nightmare of trying to get things
Tony,
resolved.
I wouldn't actually give you an F on that one. I think you need to lose your temper a little bit to be productive with some of those guys. And I think what we're being called to is to be present to our discomfort. So be present to the fact that I'm angry, that this is frustrating. Be present to, like, I think the only thing we can control is our presence. We can't necessarily control our thoughts and all of our emotions in response to the situation. But if we're present throughout, I think that's where we can use our handle. But dealing with Verizon on my end, like especially when my service cuts out in the middle of clinical sessions, right? The only way I get anything done is if I get a little more intense. Like the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Right.
Definitely.
Right.
And I'm not talking about losing my cool or going crazy, but they need to know that I'm not a happy camper.
Right.
And that usually gets the wheels moving. So I think you probably got an A.
Well, I would tell you what I thought was funny was that this was obvious that this was support out of the United States.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all of this, I heard a rooster go, and I started laughing. And that brought me back. Something real. But
Tony, at least you got real people, because I was having an Xfinity problem, which I'm totally going to get rid of, and just have internet. But I was having a real issue. Well, you have to go through AI now. You cannot get to a person and pushing zero like we used to. Remember the days of being able to push zero?
Yeah.
Get us to a live agent. Oh, no. I had to play all the games with AI before I could talk to somebody. And I lost it too.
Yeah.
I threw my phone. I thought, oh gosh, I'm acting like Dylan and I'm not even two. I was so frustrated, and then the thing was, I thought, I'm losing my cool with AI. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is getting me nowhere.
It's ironic because this was with Xfinity.
Yeah.
See what I mean about the rabbit trails?
See?
You can't
I'm
predict
telling
these
you.
things. Yeah.
I'm telling
This
you.
is
It
why
was
we never do
Xfinity.
2 of these in one night.
Yeah. Well, I didn't throw the phone, so I feel a little better.
But what Tony's talking about, what Lori's talking about, what William's talking about, this is our life. This is the stressors of life. And this is what we're looking at, trying to be able to overcome, to be able to stay in the moment, stay in the present, and see how whether either great love or great suffering is actually teaching us something and what we can learn from it, rather than just getting lost in the emotion and then we're done. The fact that Tony could hear the rooster and come right back and laugh about it, that's great. So even though he was off on a tangent, he wasn't that far from center, right? That could bring it back. I think that's a real important thing. Can a detail like that bring you back? I often talk about one of the first scenes in the movie Gladiator, where the gladiator is about to go into battle and he's surveying the scene and he's got this grim look on his face and he catches sight of just a small bird, flitting on a tree, and it just lights him up, and he's watching this bird and he's smiling, and you can tell it's taking him back home to his farm and all this stuff. and the bird flies away and he watches it and then he comes back and then goes back into battle mode. But the fact that he could be distracted by that bird to the extent that he came right back to center and that Tony could hear the rooster and come back to center, that says something about us, you know, because we're all going to oscillate. There is no way around that. We're not going to be in this awe and surrender state 100% of the time. It's not going to happen. We all just be, like I said, drooling in the corner, gazing at our navel. I mean, we've got to do more than that in life, right? But can we do it mindfully? Can we do it with that, you know, I hate to say distractibility. We talk about trying to stay away from distractions, but I suppose to be distracted from our own emotional and thought content, to be able to be distracted by the moment, to let it. Yeah, talk about distraction. Is the dog really loud to you, or is that just me? Okay, good. Yeah, thank God for noise canceling software, because she's taking my head off. Marion's just getting home from her shift. Anyway, that kind of ability to be able to come right back in, that's really telling, and that's great. So that's it. Can we stay that close to the ground? Can we stay that close to the moment that we can be invited back in, and will we accept that invitation? These are all great points to be made. But
I'll change my grade to a C.
there you go, buddy. You go for it. You can put any letter you would like. You're great.
Totally. But Tony,
I
Go ahead,
think
Ellen.
you get an A. I have screamed at the top of my lungs, representative,
Yes.
and scream. And, you know, then I get furious and just slam the phone down. I'm the F. I think you did A work.
I've been where you are many times.
Yeah. Well, notice Lori, she's not even screaming at an AI. She's just screaming at a recording. So, you know.
True.
Tony, I was
gonna say
the same
What I
thing.
want to understand is, does this qualify as none of us like it, but simple suffering? Because, you know, to me, like the internet, getting disconnected,
Good
those are
question.
really simple things. And I know with my own self, this is just me, confession. I guess it's confession. I get not getting our way. I hate that. I mean, I hate it to a passion. And what I hate even more is when I can't even control it. That's what really gets me going crazy. But it's key here, and it blows my mind that he used, Richard Rohr, that blows my mind, but and maybe it's the 3 girls that help edit all this. You know, from what I understand, Richard really gives them a lot of credit, but I'm telling you, that simple suffering, it really usually is not a major thing that gets me going.
I was going to add for what Beth said, Tony, you get an A because I get belligerent. Like big time. I don't yell, but what I say, this happened this afternoon actually, because I got a late fee for paying my my HOA fee, and I said, this is impossible. I have auto pay for 25 years. And I don't know. I said, this is not in my control. Either it's the bank or you guys didn't process it. Whatever it is, can you please waive it? He says, well, then you have to write a letter to the board of directors of the HOA. I said, oh my gosh, I lost it. I said, if you cannot help, I said, I'm not going to stand on my head and write a letter for them. But if you cannot help me, transfer me to somebody who can. And of course, she transferred me to this guy who's the blah, blah, blah. Of course, he doesn't answer. Oh, he's not in the office. So I've tried twice. I said, okay, I hope to talk to you tomorrow. I will hound them. because this is not, it has nothing to do with me. I cannot control this. It is auto pay for 25 years. If it's late for 6 days, I don't know why. It's not in my control. You fix it. Anyway, I get belligerent.
Ooh.
I know.
Yes, this is True Confessions night tonight.
I know.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
the
I think,
question is this a simple, what was it again?
Simple suffering.
Simple suffering. Is that what he means, Dave? I think that's an interesting question that Tony brought up.
Well,
Do I
let's
have-
let's ease up to it, because right now here in the next paragraph, when we truly love, we simply love. So this is where he's introducing the term. We simply love, regardless of the worthiness or value of the object. No wonder that we speak of being in love, because it's a state of being more than an occasional deliberate action. It will often feel like wonder, and our eyes will be temporarily wide open and receptive. So what I understand him saying is that when we truly love, we simply love. I mean, we're not judging. I mean, this is the whole thing that we need to keep coming back to. That's why, we talked about unconditional love, and I think someone didn't like the word. I can't remember who that was, but I like to use degreeless and indiscriminate. I think those, for me, are more descriptive of what we're talking about. We're talking about a love that has no degree. It's not more for this and less for that, more for this person, less for that person. It has no degree. It's always just what it is. It's always full on, and there's nothing you can do to attenuate it. And it's indiscriminate. It falls on everybody equally, like rain and like sun. Jesus used those metaphors for us. And so when we love, when we really love, we're just simply loving. And there is no degree and there is no discrimination. It's just falling out there like sunshine. And I think that's what I was trying to get at with that in love feeling. It's just like everything's right with the world. Everything's in its right place. All the songs make sense, right? That's the whole idea of it. And so you're just kind of emitting in all directions. And I think that's what he's talking about here when he's talking about we simply love. It's a state of being. It's not something we do. It's not something we even think of doing. If you get close to us in that state, well, then it's going to be like approaching Gene Kelly singing in the rain, right? You're just going to get what is there. And that's it. That's what I got to give right now, and that's what I think God is all the time. We're always praying for God to love us, praying for God to accept us. And, God's just up there. That's what I am. You don't have to ask me. You just have to come close enough. Drop your defenses, put your umbrella down. There I am. So it's that again, switching gears a little bit. So eyes will be temporarily wide open and receptive. And we said that kind of ecstasy in a human being is not going to last, but it certainly does with God. It's up to us. Now let's get to this last paragraph and see about this sufferings. A similar thing happens in the present of great suffering and grief. The many forms of dying also pull us into the now, even though I hate to admit it. I know none of us like it, but simple suffering, not getting our way, is often the quickest and longest lasting form of transformation into love. So this simple suffering, not getting our way, we've had all sorts of examples of that tonight. We didn't get our way. Technology was not our friend. Somebody blew it in the front office, whatever it happens to be. And then we go into the grind of the suffering and whatever it is that we do about it. But he's saying that suffering, that grind, is often the quickest and longest lasting form of transformation into love. Now, we know that there's all sorts of gradation of suffering. It's one thing to get your internet cut off. Obviously, it's another thing if a loved one dies or you get a prognosis that just blows you away. And so there is all sorts of suffering that we're talking about here. But what that suffering does, I suppose in all of its forms, like love, it just pulls back the curtain for a second. We have this projection of ourselves. We project it to ourselves, who we think we are through our egoic mind, and then we project it outward to everybody else. And in those moments, all of that is pulled away for a second. The cultured person, the lovely person that Beth is to us, gets pulled away, and she screams at the phone, or she throws something at the television, right? We look at Ellen. How could Ellen be belligerent? I mean, that just doesn't compute, right? Unless you are on the other side on the HOA call, right? And so that curtain gets pulled away for a second and something else gets revealed. That is what great love and great suffering, I believe, do for us. They pull away the curtain of our consciousness, and then we see something else. What we do with that information, of course, is entirely up to us. We can use it for good or we can use it for evil.
Mm.
So I don't know if that, Tony, is that getting close to answering
Well,
the
y-
question that you, was it you or somebody else with simple suffering?
I had something to say about how I went
That was the
from,
other Tony.
oh, sorry.
I think Beth was asking the question.
Well, Beth,
Right.
was that about simple suffering, Beth?
Yeah, but I think, Tony, you brought it up first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did bring it up, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, because the reason I said, I look at it that way, and it might be wrong or different for all of you, but the reason I look at it that way is because if I was in love and I was like finding another hour to talk to somebody or to stay in that situation, I would ignore everything else. Nothing else would matter. But what I heard with Tony was he was at that 3 hours. These other pressures came in. He's running out of time. He wasn't gonna he come to the end of that rope. But what's interesting, and I think this speaks to what we were saying about in the end is how we handle it, because in the end here, in Richard's book, he says that it turns into this transformation into love. So whatever it be, this simple suffering or a complex suffering, whatever it is, it does tend to point, or he's indicated it tends to point towards someone like finding that transformative love, which is, and then that's even better than anything that could happen to you if you can make that switch. That's how I'm understanding it.
Can we flush that out a little bit? Because I am very much relating to the other Tonys, online experience, and I don't know if that transforms into anything meaningful for me in terms of love. And I don't get that leap, how that rock in my shoe when I'm screaming for the representative. Like how that leads me to love.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't understand that either. Plus, to me, I don't see this what what we went through. We were saying simple suffering, but I don't see it as suffering. I see it as irritation. It's not that I'm suffering. I'm irritated. I didn't get my way. But yes, suffering is something to me is bigger, and yet I don't see how you can lead to longest lasting form of transformation into love.
Right.
Well,
I'm still irritated. I'm still gonna call them tomorrow. I'm gonna hound
it may be kind of
But see, here's
obvious.
the thing with grief, because Friday will be 6 years with Dale, and I really think that my frustration the other night, and it was AI because it said, "Hi, Lori." It was like I wanted to punch her, but it really has to do with the grief that I'm not seeing simple suffering. It's not simple to me. The suffering is not simple at all. And I look at what I have learned in the past 6 years, the growth and all of that. It's been painful. And I'm thinking transformational love. I was crazy about the guy. How transformational can I get? I mean, this isn't making sense to me. The transformational love, like with grief, or like I say, it was suffering is not simple for me. And then transformational, I'm thinking transformational into, I don't get it. What kind of love am I supposed to be transformational into?
Right.
I like the when he says not getting our way to kind of exemplify the simple suffering, because when I think of love, like love has never been equated to getting our way. There isn't like a sense of control in love. It's more like being in that state of vulnerability and letting go. And then when I think of suffering, I think of like kind of the yin and the yang. Like if we didn't know suffering, we wouldn't necessarily have that unveiling and consciousness of what love is and what that beauty in its aesthetic form truly is without having had suffered. And then given these oscillations of suffering and love, I think like the more as we go about our day and living life on life's terms and we're experiencing suffering to whatever degree it is, we have more opportunities to practice coming back and loving and letting go and just going, this is enough right now. I'll get through this. I don't know.
For me, I
Like
think grief, I think, is a whole different animal. I'm not sure that necessarily falls into simple suffering,
Right.
and because it strikes me that there is such a number of stages that we have to go through before we can get to that transformational place of being, softer hearted towards God or towards not getting our way that our loved one died, and being able to remember the goodness and the grace and the incredible moments that we were able to enjoy with that person. And for me, if I switch over to, the intense moments when I have lost my cool with the lack of customer service that you get on the other line of the phone, when people don't seem to be hearing what you're saying, or they're just stonewalling you with rules. And that to me is something that I'm learning. I guess what I do with it is that I'm trying to, when I can feel my temperature rising and I can tell my voice is getting harder and less patient, I have to really put forth an enormous amount of effort to listen to what the other person is saying and how it's disconnecting from what I am looking for from them.
Mm.
And almost, as I kind of think of it as, we've talked about this before, I think, in this group, about almost being a witness, watching yourself, kind of go through the paces and being able to almost, I feel like sometimes I have to, as I become aware of looking at the relative importance of this particular issue to me, whether it's about money or the inconvenience or whatever it is, that I get to try my best to right size that difficulty and take a break from it for a while. And sometimes, like Ellen, when you are and you're feeling like you got nowhere, or you got, barely an inch, and I've been there too, for sure. Sometimes that break, just detaching from those moments, helps me to just breathe, because I don't want to lose my serenity like that. That's not the person I want to be. And for me, it's that journey of, when I pick up the phone the next day, can I prepare myself for battle, in such a way that I am still respectful of the other people and trying to see their point of view, but still trying to say, I can't, just from my own life experience, I know that this is not the end of the road. I know that if I can bump this up a level, oftentimes that manager is more authorized to make those calls and to give me more of what I'm looking for. Can you help me with that? And when I can do that, and then I finally hit pay dirt. And with a recent situation I had to go through 4 different people, before I touch base with a new person who was able to facilitate that. And she said that she would call me back. And I said, I really appreciate your saying that, but here's been my experience to date. People have said that and it doesn't happen. So when are you going to call me back? What's the number going to be that I can see come up on my phone? Because if it's one of the 300, 800 numbers that I get in a course of a day, I ignore those calls. So tell me what the number's going to be. So she was able to do that for me. And lo and behold, what a miracle. The manager was able to reduce the fees that I was having to pay, and it was acceptable to me. But in the meantime, I had to kind of reduce my expectations also. And it resolved. And, you know, I got back to a more balanced perspective, and I was very grateful, you know, because I didn't do that by myself. I firmly believe that. I went through a process of transformation in that, you know, it was probably over 2 weeks is what it happened to be. And it finally, you know, I got it resolved acceptably to me because I felt like they had given part of what I was looking for. Didn't get all of it, but I got something, and that was enough.
Why we don't.
What I noticed about yesterday was in the morning I walked a creek, and you can see that in my square, and that was my simple love. Then I went into suffering, as I explained with the customer service. But when I logged back in anticipation of yesterday's conversation, I was looking at a group of people that I love and respect, and then adding good conversation on top of that kind of took me back, all the way back to that simple love again. So for me, it was like, it took me a while, but it was like, you know, talk about accepting life on life's terms. You know, it will all, it seemed like it went full circle for me. And I appreciated that.
But I have a problem with him calling not getting our way as simple suffering. It's not, to me, it's not suffering.
Oh, it's
So I don't understand that. But
Well,
you,
it depends on how you're going to define suffering. I mean, here he's defining suffering as not getting your way. I mean, if
Right.
you think about it, suffering is pretty much not getting your way. And it can be huge or it can be small, but it's not getting your way.
Yeah, I
To me,
think
Lori did not want her husband to die. You know,
Right.
that wasn't her
but
way, you know, and that grief and that suffering has been,
Right.
you know, present to her. And so, you know, how do you want to define it? You know, whatever
to
it
me-
is that causes a suffering, you get ill, you suffer, you're in pain, you suffer. He's trying to simplify it and bring it down to something that really is it's something that's not in our control. It's contrary to what we see as our best outcome or circumstances. That's
I don't
suffering.
know.
Yeah,
To me, suffering is grief and loss and.
Well, that's the way you're defining it, but he's trying to universalize it and say, hey, what's at the root of this whole thing? Well, we're not getting our way, you know? And that doesn't mean we're being spoiled brats about it. It just means this is not what we see as ideal circumstances or the way that things should be, the way the world should be. But I think we're kind of backing into something that may be usable for us. What I see with great love and great suffering are opportunities. What are we going to do with those opportunities? Something strikes us, we don't get our way. Either it's large or it's small, whatever it might happen to be, but it's affecting us in such a way that a veneer is pulled off. Maybe there's a shadow side to ourselves that we thought we had conquered long ago, and here it is as we scream at the phone. You know, that's something for us to look at. It's revealing something to us that maybe is a blockage to being able to be completely present in the moment and to let the moment be enough. Or maybe it's another way through. Who knows what it could be? But if we are open to the moment, to let it teach us in some way, rather than immediately judging it as good or bad, putting it into that category, and we're done with it now. You know, that's what we were talking about. If we just resolve the contradiction, if we just resolve the paradox in our mind, flop down to one side or another, then as Jesus would say, we have our reward in full. We don't go any further down the path. But if we can stay in that place of tension and see where it takes us, that's going to be a whole different matter. So I see great love and great suffering as opportunities to be able to move further down the way. It depends on what we do with them, you know.
I don't know if this will be helpful to anyone else, but after my diagnosis, I was talking to a dear friend of mine who's an international life coach, and he really helped me realize that maybe circumstances cannot be changed, but that's not a variable for me, but my experience of that circumstance is totally up to me and is a variable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add is as he starts his chapter, he does talk about a presence of great suffering and grief. And I think I've heard that tonight, especially when you have lost somebody. I mean, that's crazy. But I also think he's talking about a simple suffering. Again, I'm on the phone and I can't get what I want. But in all of that, I think we can argue that when he says it brings us into the now, whether you're suffering a lot, it's a great or it's a simple, it brings us into a now, and it brings us back to the second chapter when he says it wakes us up to our consciousness. And when you're on that phone arguing or you're debating, and you're doing it, it's bringing you, it's waking you up. You're like, I got to get involved, I got to get loud, I got to do whatever I got to do. But on the other side of that is it's bringing you up to that awareness. And I think that's what Richard Rohr is saying. In other words, we could just get caught up in the axle of simple and great. But I think what Richard's talking about, you're conscious in the same way you are if you're in love. And that's how I see this. It's all about now you have my attention. And like Tony did at the end, it gives them the opportunity to look at it later and say, hey, I'm not sure I want to behave like that again. I'm not sure that was the best. It wasn't the best of me. My best self wasn't in that moment. And I think in all of this, you know, we all have like moments, like lately I've been dealing with my little 2-year-old grandson. And I can see it in, you know, back to Sunday's sermon, what Dave was talking about, he already wants to get his way. He's already made up his mind as a 2-year-old. And I can, in my mind, I'm saying, oh my gosh, he's set already for life. Because he's already, I don't understand the mystery of life, but I can see it in him. And so today he tries to challenge me a little bit in that. But I also do know that when we're sitting down on the couch, like we were a couple days ago, and he just comes over and he just wants to plant a kiss on my cheek. And I'm like, right, where does that come from? It ain't coming for me, but he's sensing something. He goes, I want to share my love with you right now. Even though sometimes you may want to correct me, I still want to share my love with you. My 2 cents.
Sweet.
That's great, Tony. I hope things are getting
Dave.
a little clearer when we talk about it. Who is that?
That was me.
Oh, go ahead.
I was thinking about like Tony's phone call, like as a practical example here. And when I'm having a phone call like that, I am not, the relationship with the person on the other end is not a priority, basically. So preserving that relationship and conducting myself in a way where this person will continue to respect and like me afterwards is less important than me getting my money back, getting my refund in that moment. And I'm not suggesting that that should give us a license to be, you know, a dick, but it changes things, right? Like the priorities are different and we have to be effective. Like if Tony is likable and so on and polite and so on and so forth and ends the call without getting his refund, then I give him an F for that one. You know, it's because his goal is to get a refund, and that might require a little bit of friction. And he might have to tap into his shadow self to you know, to move the needle in that direction. And I think learning, like if I'm thinking of the transformation at all, it would have to be, just using that specific example, is having some compassion for my frustrated shadow self. If there's any transformation that's going to happen there, I think that's what it might look like from my end. But for the most part, I'm not thinking of that kind of, like those simple rocks in my shoe examples as leading to any real transformation, at least not from my past experience.
Well, it's an
Yeah.
opportunity, William. What are you going to do with it, buddy?
I'm going to make some phone calls to the telephone company tomorrow.
And I was just going to add on to what William just said. I think too, Tony, if you spent 3 hours on the phone and you were super nice to these people and you didn't get a resolution, I would probably hang up the phone myself and be very mad at myself. I would be probably resentful, saying, why wasn't I meaner? Why wasn't I a little more firm with these people? I just, killed myself for 3 hours and I didn't get resolution. Now I have to call them back tomorrow. So, I would also be resentful and angry at myself for not being a little bit more firm. So,
Of course, what we're looking for is a middle way. The middle way.
But I think what you're talking about too, Dave, is all the things that everybody has talked about tonight. To me, is when the pressure is on, the niceties start to slowly dissipate. When you're tired and you have more pressure and you're under a deadline and you're in a hurry to get something done, or someone else is depending on you, all of a sudden the niceties kind of go out the window a little bit and you start getting a little more demanding and pushy, and and then whether you're a 9 or not, forget it. That goes out the window. The relationship is already damaged. It's done now. But I think that's what it is. The layers of the onion start peeling down, and then that maybe it's the shadow, or that the core of you, at your most frustrated, you're now acting on it. And then, God help us, Judy, if we can be aware of that and not react to that too much. But it's hard to do sometimes when you're tired and you're worn down, and now you just don't care anymore. You just want to have it out with the person.
I think what you're saying is squeaky wheel.
Say again, I'm sorry.
The squeaky wheel, Tony.
You said earlier, it's just the squeaky wheel, is the one that's going to get the attention.
Right.
And I agree with Dave's comment about what we want is the middle path, but we also want a refund.
It sounds more like to me we just want to get our way.
I have to interject here. Tony, if I know I'm going to battle and it's going to take me 1, 2, 3 hours, I actually bring a book with me next to my phone and I read a book, or I do crossword puzzles, something. I do not want to waste my time. At least I'm entertaining myself while, I do that actually. I don't feel. Second, I found too, though I do get belligerent, and you say it doesn't get compute, but I do get belligerent. However, most of the time I do get my way and it gets waived. I think it's a certain way over the years I've found where, because sometimes it's a call center and you could tell there's an accent, and sometimes, rather than saying, well, I would actually many times say, this is a situation. If this was you, would you not want this done? And many times they will go to the supervisor, okay, let me see what I can do. Let me tell you, 90% of the time I do get my way.
Okay, well, I'm going to have you call for me next time.
Yeah, I actually was writing names down in the book. Like, who should I call if I'm having problems?
Ellen, I always tried to cry whenever I got pulled over by a cop. I tried to cry, and it only worked once. And all the other times I cried, I still got the ticket. So it doesn't always work. That's my last resort, cry.
I never cried. And there was one time he gave me a ticket. And it was in this, and I made a diagram, and I said, this car was this, and this. I knew I was right. So it was dismissed. That's what I mean. And I was ready to fight. I went to court. I was ready to show it, but it was already, the judge dismissed it.
I'm wondering if Richard Rohr would write another book like, Lord, help me get back my refund.
Or at
Yeah,
least let
just
me get
some parting thoughts here because we need to rein it in. By the way, Beth and Brady had to leave. They had a call with their kids at 7:45, so they had to go. And poor Tanya texted me; she got vertigo while she was sitting here with us, and so she had to go off. So that's why we're down a couple of squares. Now, I just want to say, first of all, when we read something like Simple Suffering, we want to make sure that we are in no way trivializing the serious suffering that we all go through. We would never want to do that, not what Lori's going through and not what all the rest of us have gone through. So we never want to trivialize that or call it simple. But there are gradations of suffering. I mean, everything that we're talking about here, although they can be supremely irritating, they are first world problems, and we do need to remember that, in the scheme of things, keeps things in perspective and find that middle way. It's not that we're going to lie down and be doormats, but we're not going to just try to destroy the other person either. We want to try to find that middle way where we are working to get what contractually we are owed in this life, but we are still playing by certain rules of decorum and decency and so on and so forth. Because in the end, that's what's really going to make our life worth living, is to be able to occupy that kind of space. And I think that's what we're ultimately talking about. Great love and great suffering are opportunities when the veneer is pulled off that we can see something that we don't normally see because we're constantly projecting on ourselves. And what we do with that is up to us. But life is going to keep serving up the opportunities. So don't worry about that. If you miss one and you have to grade yourself an F like Tony said he did yesterday, don't worry. Another bus is going to be coming around the corner. So you'll have another shot at another bite at the apple. But this is what we're looking for. We're looking for that living life for the most part, right here, right now, with that kind of awe and wonder that even when it's not working, technology can be pretty amazing, So if we can keep that in mind, maybe it'll change things. All right, another good discussion. We only got through one, but that's okay. We got through one. We did our quota for today. Scotty.
Thank you, Father, for this time together. Just the revelations that we get when we hear each other's story, what each of us go through, how it can encourage us if we let it be the teacher that it's intended to be. And we don't always see that in the moment when we're experiencing great suffering, technological suffering, just a person who's not very understanding. And sometimes we lose our cool. So we just pray tonight that we are learning as we continue to read these books and do these studies and share each other's experiences, and that we just reflect on all the possibilities, the opportunities to make different choices, create different results if we don't like the result we're getting, and that we have all the tools we need to accomplish the task. We thank you, Lord, for overseeing how this whole world spins and we don't go flying off. You got every detail under control, and with that we can find peace even in the most frustrating of circumstances if we allow ourselves to do so. So, Father, we're grateful. We pray our prayers and give our thanks and just acknowledge how much we love you, and we do this all in Jesus' heavenly host's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Another good night. See you Sunday.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Night, night.
All right. See you then. Good night, Jordana. Good night, Patricia.
All right. See you on Sunday.
You got it. Bye-bye.